I was pretty broken. My life was, I just carried my son from hospital to graveyard. I was completely and utterly gone. I'd lost faith in humans.
What would you do if you faced relentless racism and bullying in the place that you loved the most?
Institutional racism does not happen without the support of people of colour.
Azeem's journey is not just a story of personal resilience, but a call to action for all of us.
Listening to what Azeem Rafiq had to say, I thought it was heart-rending testimony. I want to thank him for his bravery, for being so open about the racism that he sadly has suffered.
You were taking antidepressants at 20?
Yeah, 21, 22, in around that. In 2012, I became the youngest ever Yorkshire captain.
Join us as we delve deep into Azeem's powerful story, exploring the challenges he faced and the impact of his courageous actions. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast in partnership with our awesome sponsors, Megaverse. More about them later. Let's get into this episode. What would you do if you faced relentless racism and bullying in the place that you loved the most? Today I speak with Azeem Rafiq, a former English professional cricketer whose courageous stand against systemic racism has sent shockwaves through the sports community. Azeem's journey is not just a story of personal resilience, but a call to action for all of us. As an anti-racism campaigner and whistleblower at Yorkshire County Cricket Club, Azeem exposed the harsh realities of discrimination in cricket. In 2020, he boldly spoke out about the racism and bullying he endured, sparking a movement that empowered many others to share their own experiences. Azeem is also the author of the book It's Not Banter, It's Racism, What Cricket's Dirty Secret Reveals About Our Society, which is being released on the 13th of June this year. Join us as we delve deep into Azeem's powerful story, exploring the challenges he faced and the impact of his courageous actions. So let's talk about the Megaverse, the internet of people. Shaping the next iteration of the internet, Megaverse is powered by revolutionary blockchain technology built on decentralized community ownership. It offers users, brands, and businesses a seamless, regulated, and transparent opportunity for growth, revenue, and community building. Megaverse is accelerating user adoption and achieving these goals through multiple verticals like Megachain, a high-performance blockchain for tamper-proof transactions, Megafile system for encrypted decentralized storage, and Mega Studio, which democratizes development through collaborative and AI elements. Organizations across industries like Dubai Multi-Commodities Center, Dubai World Trade Center, and Ras Al Khaimah government have already explored the lucrative potential of a Megaverse presence. Megaverse enables users to create a Web3 future for the people where technology serves human purposes. Dive in and discover the Internet of People with Megaverse today. Azeem, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We met a year ago and said we were going to do this, and finally we got a chance to get it done. And there's a few reasons for that. Obviously, one, there's a new book coming out, which we'll talk about. But there's a storm that was created a few years ago around you. And I want to learn more about that. You've told me a bit about it, but I want to learn more about that. But I also want to understand, because maybe I come from a different generation. I'm 54 years old, or I was the other day, and I grew up understanding different things in different ways. As a kid, I was living in Nigeria, so to me, everyone was the same. But racism existed in my world in a way that wasn't racism, almost. It was just different people of different colours had different nicknames, and that's what I grew up with as a kid. I remember when I was in Nigeria, we didn't have that. And then when I moved back to England, I remember in the village that I live in, the first coloured family that moved into the village. And that was kind of like, whoa, hold on a minute. But in London, that was normal for everybody. So talk to me about what racism means to you as a term, okay, and how it impacted you.
Yeah, I think, look, obviously, I was born in Pakistan. So born in Pakistan, in Karachi, city, didn't really know or understand or even heard about racism. And it wasn't until, got to the UK in 2001, we moved out of Pakistan. We had a very good life, very privileged life. Dad was successful in property and construction. And then around 2001, Karachi started to become a little bit unsafe. My father's business partner was kidnapped and burnt, and we found him, half the person that, he was in physically. So that was how we moved from Pakistan to the UK. And that was July 2001 that we moved to the UK. And then 9/11 happened. And that was probably the first, as I look back, instances of racism, Islamophobia that we confronted. And it was the first time, actually, that we realized, actually, we were different. Because before that, as you say, first, you're a young kid, you don't see any differences. You're not born with seeing and believing that. But then that was the first instance. And my father had a visible beard, getting called Bin Laden on the streets, and things like that, go back where you come from, the P word. These things were the norm. And again, we're in a new environment, you brush it off. You're sort of, the way you're taught is like, look, you can't do anything about it. You've just got to put your head down and just work hard and just make a success of your life, And then I, got into cricket, got into the Yorkshire dressing room. The saying that you've got to be twice better than the white person was, something that was drummed into you. But it didn't really sort of hit home what that actually meant for a very long time. I joined the Yorkshire dressing room full of my heroes. I was a 15-year-old captain in Yorkshire under 15s, watching the 2005 Ashes, watching these stars on TV. And then, within a year and a half, I was in a dressing room with them. So that was sort of, when I got into that dressing room and, being called the P word was just everyday, comments that were clearly, very racist. But I had this dream. My dream was to play for England, be the best. I want best in the world. My aim, I've always sort of ambitious and aimed high. And for that dream, I was, able to block out everything, anything and everything. And also, I think subconsciously I knew that the minute I speak, there is no one's going to listen for a start, but that's the end of my career. As a 15-year-old, again, at my local club, I didn't drink. I was pinned down and red wine was poured down my throat. Now, I look back now, there were people around, people saw that, but no one did anything or said anything.
Were you the only person in that particular environment? Were you the only person of colour?
At my local cricket club, yes.
Okay.
But it wasn't as if we're talking about 2008, people are aware of what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
But as you sort of started the conversation on, people thought that was funny, right? People thought that was banter. And for me, I think if I have one regret is that I looked the other way for a very long time for that dream of playing cricket for England. But it hit home. It started to hit home for me, but in around end of 2017, start of 2018. I lost my son in 2018, and that was when it really hit home. But in 2017, I was feeling really, really down, anxious, struggling with anxiety. And I didn't really know what was going on. You look from the outside, I'm living the dream, playing cricket in front of, crowds on TVs, doing well, having success. So, what is it that was happening that was making me feel so down and upset? And it was when I started to sort of look into that, and it just hit me. I think towards the end of 2017, I reported it first as bullying to a board member and mentioned racism. Because like I said, I didn't want to believe that I was being racially abused. Because for a person of color, when you start believing that, it changes every part of your life. The trauma, the way you look at everything, you doubt things when, have I been treated like this because because I'm brown, or, have I been, is that happening because I'm brown? And that realization sort of happened when I lost my son. I think from there on, in terms of racism and that, and I look back, from 2013 onwards, I'd been taking antidepressants. I captained Yorkshire.
How old were you at 2013?
Oh God, 11 years ago. So what, 22?
You were taking antidepressants at 20?
Yeah, 21, 22, in around that. In 2012, I became the youngest ever Yorkshire captain. Went on our 12th man for England at a test match in India, in Mumbai, in the dressing room with the likes of Peterson, Trott, Anderson, so on. I was literally on the verge of, playing cricket for England. So it made absolutely no sense. And I didn't know. At the time, I didn't know why. I'd been on and off on antidepressants ever since. And it was in 2017 I realised why. Because actually the workplace, my safe space, what should have been my safe place, what should have been the place I felt most comfortable, was actually the place that was making me feel so down and upset. And, I had instances, and I've totally gone on a tangent here, but, in 2013, I was on the other side of my balcony ready to end my life. And that's where it took me, but I didn't know what took me there. But the realization when it came has been, the last what is 2017, 2018, it's nearly 6 years now, has been a real realization of actually, how as a brown person, the overt racism is there to see. The covert racism is incredibly, incredibly difficult and challenging, not only to deal with, not only to experience it, but how do you deal with that? Because the response, you're thinking too much. It wasn't like that. And it's just that sort of realization that actually, discrimination and racism exist in our society, in our workplaces, in our institutions, and it's been a real sort of confronting moment for me as to who I am, what I am, and what I want to do with my life moving forward.
When you first wanted to raise the issue, who did you talk to before you raised the issue? Did you go and speak to dad or a family friend and say, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? Because that was kind of like a biggest step to take, yeah?
Well, so as I said, in 2017, we were at the end of season dinner, and the board member who had just been brought in as an inclusive and diversity board member comes up and speaks to, and this is the thing, within the sound bites of the whole story, a lot of this detail's been missed. To myself and Adil Rashid, right? So not just me, Adil Rashid, England player, World Cup winner. And he himself approaches us and talks about, that he's heard rumours about racism being prevalent in the dressing room. And we both open up, we both talk a little bit. And then he asks us, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to take it further and we both, Adil initially, but we were like sort of, look, let's see what happens, because it's scary to speak internally, externally. It's scary. And then I lost my son. When I made the decision to then speak internally, I met the CEO, the director of cricket, my own union staff, a friend, and I just went there, and I just, I wrote things down on a piece of paper, and I just poured my heart out and told them how I'd been feeling and what I think is happening. Yorkshire got rid of me 7 days later. So that was their initial response. I was pretty broken. My life was, I just carried my son from hospital to graveyard. I was completely and utterly gone. I'd lost faith in humans, to be honest. These are people, Spencer, that I spent, most of my life with. Some of these guys stayed at my house. My mum cooked food for them regularly, as a group. So it was very difficult. One of my, colleagues came when I carried my son from hospital to the graveyard, and I'll never forget that. That's something that I'll never be able to, I guess, confront with, is how is it possible that I spent the best part of, a decade with these people, and not one of them had the courtesy to even, come and, helped me in that time. I'd seen the support other people had received when, personal tragedies have happened. So that was really difficult, but I handed my keys to my flat to my father and I said, I'm going. I went back to Pakistan. And, I was there 7 months. There was myself, but, I had a wife that was really, really struggling. My wife was smashing things. It was difficult to see. She found, I can't even imagine. I was struggling, but I can't even imagine the pain that she was going through. And it was a difficult moment for us. So I just went back to Pakistan. I knew I need more help and support from her family to help her than for me to be able to help her and then help all of us. So I lost my son and my career within the space of 4 months. So this was parked away. I just went and I knew I needed to recover, heal, and then try and, decide what I wanted to do with my life, because for as long as I'd, known, I was Azeem Rafiq, professional cricketer, the identity part. So that was the next step. And then, my wife got pregnant. We came back to the UK sort of middle of 2019. I started playing minor counties cricket. I was performing. I was, starting to build myself back up with an aim to go and play back in 2020. And then, 2020, obviously COVID happened, which was a real moment for everyone. It was for me. And initially, I'll be honest, I've spoken about this in the book. Initially for me, it was like, oh, you know what, breathe. It felt like I'd been on this incredible treadmill since 2013 of, mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, identity, nearly committing suicide, not really, losing my own values. I went through a phase, towards that 2012 where I started drinking, doing things that I wasn't, was against my values. And the whole sort of snowball effect was me really, really felt like I'd just been on this treadmill and just fighting for so long within myself of who I was and what I'd become. So initially, not realizing, obviously being scared of what we were watching on TV, but I was like, oh, get to have a little bit of a breather here. And then the Black Lives Matter movement happened. You saw what happened with George Floyd and, that confronted everyone. But it was on the back of that, when you started to see all these organizations, and I'm sure there was some that were genuine, but a lot were tick boxing. A lot was, trying to portray themselves as, this sort of perfect organization. Inclusion, diversity became a big topic. And Yorkshire put these diversity logos on their shirts, and it felt like another, punch in the stomach, really, because I, sat there 2 years ago and talked about my experiences and they got rid of me. But it was this next part that really made me angry. I got really angry, and it was the director of cricket, Martin Mogson, and Yorkshire Post did an interview because Michael Carberry had recently spoken out about his experience as a black cricketer. And they did an interview where basically they said, oh, Michael Carberry should be listened to. And, Martin talked about never being in a dressing room with, experiences of racism, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I sat in a room with you 2 years ago, literally could hardly get a word out, sort of telling you about being called a packy or being, all sorts of things, in the dressing room that were happening. And for you to do that interview, I just thought, oh my God, that that made me really angry. But I needed to pick my life up, and I've always, challenges have been part of life. You're way more experienced than me, but the reality is you fall a lot, and you got to pick yourself up and, learn from it and move forward in life and drive forward. And that's how I've always been. So, I had a passion around food. In the pandemic, me and my family started sort of taking food in for NHS staff, for, fire workers and stuff, just for key workers, just doing whatever we could from a food point of view. Then we started, making curry on a Wednesday night and a Saturday night, selling it and raising money for the local hospice. And from there, I thought, I want to do something around food. So I opened this Asian tea business, in a container out of a car park. And I put my day and night into it. I was going to I still wanted to play cricket. So I was doing a 6 o'clock spinning session, then doing some delivery for Amazon, then going and setting this up. And I was doing this just, because I thought that's what I wanted to do. I'll get into it. I had an interview around my new business, and that's where it really, so in going back to your question, I hadn't planned it. I hadn't spoken to anyone. I didn't know what I was doing. There is actually probably the truth. I had an interview around my new business, got asked a question around racism and discrimination, because that was the topic at the time. And you know what? I couldn't keep it in. I got emotional. And I said a little bit, didn't say a lot. I talked about having an openly racist captain, a few instances that had happened. And as I look back, they weren't right. And I wish I'd spoken up earlier, but, I had that dream, and for that dream, I was blinkered. So that's really how I spoke. The first my family found out is the interview a few weeks later on Sky News, when I talked about how close I came to taking my own life. That's when my family first heard about this whole issue.
When you consider people being racist towards you in the dressing room, I've obviously followed everything that's happened and done my research on or the kind of like the riposts and the different opinions and different thoughts. Some people said they weren't racist, as you well know. Do you think sometimes some people that think they're not racist are racist, but they don't know they're racist? Or they don't know consciously that they're racist, or they don't, it's like it's not in their mind to be racist. They're just saying words that they've grown up saying and jibing because their father was like it and their grandfather was like it and so on and so forth. And do you think because of that, some people were like, I haven't been racist, were saying it for that reason?
I think you had a sort of a combination of a lot of different things, but I think fundamentally it went back to that environment. It was so normalised. So as I think a lot of people were, I don't want to use the word victims for those that said racist stuff, but I think a lot of people, I felt for a lot of people on the other side of this as well, because they came into that dressing room as 15-year-olds, as 14-year-olds, as 13-year-olds, just like I did. Mm. And what they saw as the norm, as what's acceptable was, the M word, the P word, what are you lot doing here? You lot sit over there. There's too many of you lot. All of these things and more was what they saw and they learned as kids in dressing rooms as a norm, and not just as a norm, as it being celebrated. So I actually do have some sympathy for them in that that's what they were brought up to see. And sporting dressing rooms can be brutal places, and
I'm sure
sporting dressing rooms, everyone wants to be, popular. Everyone wants to, so if someone is seeing their hero, saying the P word as a 14, 15-year-old, and the whole dressing room is laughing and, is all right with it, the likelihood is that that young kid is going to follow in that same footsteps, unless someone in the leadership goes, that is not acceptable, or in the environment, that is not acceptable. We don't stand for that, unless there's some boundaries and clarity as to what's accepted and what's not.
But do you not think sometimes that comes from there being a situation like you created to make people go, oh, I didn't realise, or even the powers above going, situation has changed here. We need to really pay attention to what's happened here because we haven't before. And what you do by bringing this up and for everything that took place has enabled clubs to be more conscious about it. Well, any environment, it doesn't have to be a sports room, does it? Any environment where there's a group of people that work together on whatever they work on, to be aware of something they might have been ignorant to before.
I think a lot of the sort of like, you know, oh, we're going for a curry tonight, or you know, you must know where the best curry is. Like I got a phone call a few weeks ago, right, and a South Asian guy walks into a dentist, and the woman just looks at him and goes, "Oh, I'm going to have a curry tonight." And you know, you wouldn't say that in its isolation is like, you know, you can say that's just ignorance.
Yeah.
But the P word and the M word, and you know, terms like Rafa the Kafir.
What was that?
My nickname was Rafa the Kafir. Now, I didn't even know that Kafir in South Africa back it is like seen as racist as the M word.
Kafir.
Yeah. But I actually saw that, I took that term, you know, actually, because in our religion, if you're a disbeliever, you get called a kafir. Or if you do things that are not, you know, aligned to Muslim values and stuff, you can. So I actually thought that it was a bit of Mickey taking of me from that point of view, but actually it wasn't. So people know the P word for a very long time that that's not acceptable. The M word is not acceptable. So the real sort of them parts of it, I think I'm not going to sit here and give people the benefit of the doubt or let them, you know, these weren't young people, you know, these were international cricketers. You know, they knew what was right and wrong. But, you know, the more I have a problem with is that leaders, you know, we've got CEOs, you know, we're not talking about volunteer-led organization here with, you know, like we've got CEOs and chairs and boards and stuff that should have known better. But yes, you know, in terms of the players, you know, I'll take Gary Balance, for example. You know, me and Gary met up after, you know, once after everything became so big and stuff, and he apologized to me face to face. And, you know, that was really important for both of us, and it helped both of us move forward. And I think Gary was as much being hard done in this by that same institution, because what the institution did is, first they tried to fight me, to say that I'm wrong, I'm lying. These are the things when people lose out on. I haven't been proven right across 3 or 4 different investigations without paperwork, without documentation. You know, there's absolutely no way Yorkshire County Cricket Club or an independent investigation which was rigged against me would have found anything in my favour if they could help it. The fact that it has is because there is documented and there is evidence and substantial evidence of it. When Yorkshire first responded, I got in touch with Gary's agent and said, I can see the language here. When it goes wrong for them, they're going to throw him under the bus. And that's what happened. In my first interview was 8 hours. I kept repeating to them, please don't turn this into individuals. This is about institutions. It's about things that have gone wrong. This is an opportunity to, you know, be better, get better. Please don't turn this into individuals. I kept ringing them. I rang the Professional Cricketers Association, the ECB, just get us in a room. Let's try and solve this and work a way forward, how we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. You know, what's happened is happened. I'm not going to get my son back. I'm not going to get my career back. And actually, I want people to just learn from this. And that's exactly what happened. Once it went pear-shaped for Yorkshire, you know, Gary was the one who was sort of thrown out there as this, you know, the language from Yorkshire changed from nothing happened to, 1 or 2 bad people. And actually it wasn't 1 or 2 bad people. It was the whole institute. It was the whole organization. It was the institution. It was so ingrained in there that it, you know, as I look back now, I was being called a packy from my teammates, from staff, from people working at the doors, you know, the food, you know, the retail. It was throughout the club, right? So to try and then put it on 1 or 2 people, and actually I'm thankful to Gary, and I've not said this before because no one's really gone into this detail. Gary, from the offset, apart from 1 term, from the offset, accepted everything and didn't lie. He didn't lie about the terms that he'd used. And actually, that was the thing that didn't let Yorkshire whitewash this and turn this into it's just me and I've got a problem.
Yeah.
So actually him sort of stepping away and actually saying, no, this did happen, made it really difficult for anyone to go, this didn't happen. So yeah, I think there is a degree within that where actually people just didn't know.
Talk to me about racism in different ways here, because I want to make sure that we're all clear. Is there racism between people of different colours, or is all racism coming from white people to people of different colours? Have you ever experienced it, or have you ever heard about it even? I know that, for example, in the United States, African Americans and Hispanics sometimes have had their kind of like challenges with each other, but in cricket, was it only from the white folk?
The notion that, and I want to talk more on this, the notion that racism just happens through bad white people is just the most ridiculous thing I've heard. Institutional racism does not happen without the support of people of colour, right?
What do you mean by that?
Because, and you'll see it now, right? So who was the first person I went to? He was a South Asian,
Yeah.
Supposedly inclusivity and diversity board member. Unfortunately, and this whole space, and I've heard these things about this space being a little bit murky and a little bit like, I've seen that and experienced that myself. Unfortunately, this people's trauma is being used to set up, for some people to use and get jobs. And this is the bit which shocks everyone. My biggest support in this has come from 3 middle-aged white men, a demographic that the minute they open their mouth gets shut down. They have put their life, their personal life, their careers. They've had to have security cameras installed. They've had to have fences installed. They've lost work. They've been isolated, just shoved to the side from their own mates. And that's the demographic, middle-aged white men. The people that supported Yorkshire, and I've done there's a chapter in the book, Uncomfortable Conversation, the other way, because I think it was important for me to talk about this. People who supported Yorkshire, there was a big open letter from 150 odd Bradford businesses, and I'm not saying all of them, but open letter, good virtue, nice little press story, looked good. That weekend, the CEO went and met one of the leaders of one of the businesses, and then they went round to make sure that I didn't get any support. And I didn't get any support. And that summer, while my investigation was ongoing, the amount of photos I have of, British Pakistanis, British South Asians going to watch cricket at Yorkshire in boxes, I don't think I've ever seen that many go to watch them ever, right? So suddenly, what I'm saying is they were invited into these VIP boxes, into spaces that they've never been in. And they saw, oh, you know what, this is good. So they became the people, and that's where, the institution used them to try and, get rid of my story. And they become complicit in institutional racism, in my view, right? Some of them sorted out little deals. One of them got a massive grant from Leeds City Council for their work with Yorkshire County Cricket Club. So you had a lot of this happening, and that's what I mean about institutional racism and that cover that people of colour, provide. Again, I've talked about in the book about, Rishi Sunak, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, and I've talked about this, where you have this government, which is arguably, from a representation point of view, being the most diverse government we've had.
Yeah.
The damage that these people have done to people of colour, to those from minority groups, their language, their rhetoric, on a weekly basis is unimaginable. The last few years, watching how Islamophobia has been green-lighted through these individuals has been really eye-opening. And, Rishi Sunak spoke a few weeks ago about when we had the situation with Frank Hester, that, I'm an example of, how Britain's not racist. Well, actually, I think he is the very example of how Britain and our institution have tried to deal with racism. And they've conflated representation for inclusion and diversity. Diversity is a diversity of thought. That's what diversity is to me. Representation is different. And, far too many times what you get in Yorkshire did it, right, let's get a brown person, let's get a black person, let's get a woman, let's get a Muslim person, and that's it, we've solved it. And then it just reverts back. And that's what I mean about, I don't think racism and institutional racism happens without people of colour. And in terms of sort of racism, the notion, again, I've talked about this in the book, is that people of colour can't be racist is just utter rubbish, because, again, I've experienced it, and I've seen it, and we see it on a daily basis. So I think the one thing I'd say, and my message to white people, middle-aged white men as well, is that actually your allyship is something that makes such a difference to us. So I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done without these three white blokes. And especially, the two journalists, George DeBell and James Butler, because, their support of me, there's we'll touch on this. I don't think people realize when white privilege and these conversations are happening, what that actually means. And too many people, so a friend of mine responded to me, very early on when I spoke out, he was like, I'm not privileged. I've had to work, blah, blah, blah. I've done this and that, I've had to counsel state. And I had to try and explain to him, when people are saying white privilege, what that means. It doesn't mean that you've not worked hard. It doesn't mean that. What we're trying to say is, if I walk into a shop, the starting point is I'm a thief. If I go to an airport, I'm a terrorist. That's my starting point, regardless of anyone knowing me or not, because of the colour of my skin. And as a white person, you don't have that starting point. That's not yours. And that's what white, that's the explanation of when people say you've got white privilege. That's what it is. Your starting point when you walk into a room is not of suspicion. You're not going to be looked at with, what will you do to me? And that's, it's trying to explain people these things a bit more openly without the sound bites of the press. And that's hopefully what, this book and some of the things that I'm doing will do.
If you go through to 2050, 2060, 2070,
wow,
and you just imagine that far ahead with the population decline of white people bringing children through and Muslim families demonstrating that they're pretty good at it, well, we're pretty bad at it, you're going to see that shift, aren't you? You're going to see that shift to the white become the minority. I wonder, and we're just guessing at this question, I wonder what it would be like then, okay? What it will be seen as then and how it will be interpreted.
Well, I think it's really important that this is why I think this is the issue of our time. I think, these well-being, and I think it all interlinks, mental health, well-being, safe spaces in workplaces, culture, racism, discrimination, equal opportunities. I think these are the issues of our time. And I've been very fortunate over the last 2 years to have spent time with a lot of different corporates. And, it's the same, these conversations that I'm having. And, there's a chair of a big firm said to me, one of the things we're really struggling with is on employee grievances, issues. So I think these are the things of our time, and how we deal with this over the next 5-10 years will define what it looks like further down the line. But in terms of your question, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the oppressed can become the oppressor. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. And I think that's why it's very, very important. And I see the defensive nature of how people are responding, and they feel like all the language that I've heard, or Muslims are taking over, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And actually, for me, it's taking this understanding that people come from different places, different cultures, and different thought processes. But then actually, there's got to be some common ground and common place in all of this. And for me, do what you want, however you want to be, what you believe in, completely all right. I'll respect that. I don't have to, do the same thing, and the same way you don't have to do the same thing. And I hope as we move forward that next 5-10 years and how it's dealt with means that when we do end up in that 2050, 60, that, we don't have a situation where oppressed becomes oppressor, or what, because unfortunately history does tell us that discrimination, today is Muslims, tomorrow it could be someone else. And we're not learning from history. And that's why it's so important that we actually learn about what's happened in the past and actually don't just forget it, because there's this, with all of these things, there's this big rush to run forward. It's like, let's go, let's move on, and actually that's when problems reoccur, and it's, you know, it's sort of a little bit of re-educating and understanding, you know, where we all come from and what our backgrounds are and what our history is, and you know, and that's where education is such an important facet.
Ricky Gervais said, isn't it interesting how if you're born in Pakistan, you're probably Muslim. If you're born in India, you're probably Hindu. If you're born in America, you're probably a Christian, and you've all been born into the best religion. I listen to that and then I think to myself, what people should actually do is go and live in different countries, because here we are in Dubai right now, and I've lived in 10 countries over the last 30 years. I've had the fortune to live in Buddhist countries and Islamic countries and Christian countries, and all I've evolved into is somebody that can't see any difference, because actually that Islamic stuff, that's quite interesting actually. And when I was in Thailand, but that Buddhist stuff, that's quite interesting actually. Oh, those people live a certain way, that's quite interesting. You know, the pursuit of money and success by some people, thinking that that's the, you know, that's proving that you are, you know, achieving something in life. And then meeting a family that don't have much but are happier than any other family I've ever seen in my life, as they live on the side of a mountain, looking at these people that are stuck in the traffic commuting every day, pursuing their goals, thinking, what are they doing? It's becoming aware. You know, if you're from a little village like Barnsley or Sedgefield, you know, if you are, that's your community, isn't it? You know, Barnsley would be coal miners.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were the pits there, weren't there?
Yeah.
So that community would have all been built around the coal mines. And so all of the people working in the pits would have been playing the football, the cricket, they would have been in the social club and all that kind of stuff. And people don't necessarily know outside of their own community or embrace as much as maybe we get the benefit of living over here in a place like Dubai.
That is education. For me, that is education, awareness, you know, learning from each other, having that, you know, the experiences that you have had has allowed you to, you know, have this incredible amount of experiences of different cultures, different experiences. You know, do you know everything? Probably not, but you know a lot more than you would have if you just stayed in one place. And that's allowed you to, you know, feel comfortable and not feel, because a lot of it, I think humans react in this manner when they feel challenged. Fear of the unknown. And, you know, it's, they feel challenged. And that's why I talk about, you know, taking the fear out of this conversation, you know, creating safe spaces where people can learn from each other. Look, you know, not everyone's going to have the opportunity to go live in different countries, but, you know, there is enough around us to be able to learn from each other. And this is where the most disappointing thing is our leaders. You know, the rhetoric in the country, you know, the divisiveness and, you know, creating that hate between communities. Actually, there's a lot that we have in similarities with each other, especially, you know, if you're from minority backgrounds or whatever. Actually, everyone's fight's the same fight. It's interesting. I watched a documentary, I think it was about a month or so ago on Channel 4 called Defiance, how the British agents fought the far right in the 70s. Now, I moved to the UK in 2001, and to put it mildly, apart from cricket, I didn't have a clue of life until the last few years, right? So I had no clue about this history, like none whatsoever. And I watched this and I was like, wow. I was left in awe of these individuals, these young boys and girls who had basically had, you know, they were getting murdered, right, for being brown. So you look at that and you think, wow, so much has changed. And then I watched that documentary and I found so many things. So I weirdly, the bloke who was actually from prominent part of that, he came to see me when I first spoke out to see if he could support me. And I was so dazed that I don't even remember it. So when I saw the documentary, I just, you know, I followed him and he sent me a message saying, I came to see you, how are you? I was like, oh, did you? So I got into a conversation with him and I said to him, I watched that and I think, wow, we've come a long way. You know, a lot has changed. But then I watched it and I was like, but a lot hasn't changed. And the things that hadn't changed was the language and the rhetoric from the politicians, from the press. And that's where, you know, that was really, to me, I was looking at that and going, that's how we consume our information. Then, you know, if you are in Barnsley and you are in that little, bubble, and what's being fed to you is that, Muslims are a problem, or these people are a problem. They're going to take your houses, they're going to take your jobs. They're the reason you can't get an hospital appointment. They tell you that 10, 15, 20 times. You're going to start believing it. And that's where we haven't moved. And, obviously these people, and they fought and they won. So I said to them, I was like, you guys fought and you won, right? You won. You stopped there being physical violence of that. I'm sure there's still instances, but, a petrol bomb being thrown through a letterbox and stuff like that, hopefully doesn't happen, or is not as frequent as it was. So what was it that happened that, it's changed and developed into a different format where I think it's more institutionalized through workplaces. And I said, I feel like now we get eaten up inside through it as opposed to being killed on the street. Actually, if I was called a P word now, I think I can deal with it because I can confront it. But some of the things, that covert stuff that happens, the gaslighting, it's so difficult to deal with, and you spend your whole night sort of, how do I respond to that? So that's where it's changed. And I asked him, what do you think the reason is? And the one thing when I watched that documentary was everyone sort of non-white referred to themselves as black. And that was the common fight. That was the common connection. And then as history's shown us, as institutions do, there was a lot of divide and rule. Pakistani Welfare Association, Indian Welfare Association, black organization, few MBs, few OBs. And before you know it, now you've got a situation where, if there's funding available, if there's something available, you've got these people sort of actually fighting for it, competing for it.
Yeah. So
you've created them divide lines as opposed to trying to find something that unites us all. And, from a cricketing perspective, I'm trying to look at ways in where I can, use my platform for good and try and create opportunities. And I'm trying to, there is different sort of organizations that are for South Asians, for black people and other things. And I'm trying to look at ways how actually you can do something where try and unite and try and get away from them sort of racial lines while understanding that people are different and respecting and providing for people's differences and what they want, but actually finding a way which brings us all together into one. Because actually a lot of these things happen because of a lack of time spent in each of the spaces, lack of learning about, me not knowing about what your experiences are. And I talk a lot about this when I speak, is actually people look for lived experience. Within your own four walls, you have so much lived experience. You just need to find a space, provide a space where people can not be fearful, not be scared that they're going to get cancelled or lose their jobs, and have that conversation with each other. And as human beings, I think actually, we're incredible. If there's spaces to learn and stuff, I think we will learn and I think we will get better. So I think that's, for me, is the future.
I think you're right. And I think, what I've learned over the years is just that the more we think we're different, the more we need to stop for a second. Because actually, like you said, we're way more the same than we are different. Okay, we just are. What do we all want in life? We want our kids to be healthy. We want to have a job or a career that we can enjoy. We want to live in a safe environment. We want our family to be safe and happy. We want to make good loyal friends. Tell me something that nobody wants. Any of those things nobody wants. Everybody wants exactly the same thing. So we are way more the same than we are different. Okay, you speak a different language to me. You speak Portuguese or you speak Spanish. Well, nowadays there's technology that means I can put something in my ear which can translate everything, which means my mother-in-law who speaks Russian and doesn't speak English, I'm going to be able to communicate with her. Are there cultural differences? Yes, but in the main, are we the same? Absolutely. Okay, you wrote a book. I've written a book. Tell me, before we go into the book, tell me what the journey was like to write this book.
Well, hardest thing in the world. Genuinely, that I've found this. So we signed the book, I'd say we were having conversations about it before the story became massive, around when I gave evidence at Select Committee. So I thought the book was going to be sort of my space to just say what, basically just space out what happened and then leave it.
Yeah.
And then the story, became way bigger than I expected to do, or I think anyone expected it to. And then the story just continued. And we were trying to write this book while the story was live. I thought the story ended. Then the ECB woke up and decided that they now had to do something. And it just kept snowballing into what I think became a circus at the end. And I wasn't naive to that fact. By the end, I think a lot of people looking were going, everyone's a bunch of idiot here. And, that was actually taking away from the one thing I want to emphasize on it. I'm not unique. This experience is not unique in any way, shape or form. And that's been proven by the independent commission that happened after that spoke to over 4,000 people. So this is not unique. And I didn't want this sort of media, this organized ECB trying to be seen to be great, and within that, and then big names within that lose the actual cause, which is making cricket a place for everyone, a safe place for everyone, a place that values everyone for who they are, and gives you an opportunity on your skill as opposed to where you come from or the color of your skin. So anyway, in terms of the book, the story just kept moving in so many different directions, and I wasn't sure where to, and was writing it live, and a lot of different emotions at different time, a lot of anger, a lot of hurt, and natural instinct, you want to respond, a lot of lies being printed constantly, gaslighting, some of the biggest names in cricket. I mean, I've not gone into a lot of stuff in this book because I want things to move forward, but the way the press, the cricket press, sort of got together to try and push this issue away, push me away, attack me, was not to stop me, because I think by then they'd realised it wouldn't stop me. It was to stop everyone else that was ready to come out. There was 50 players I know as a group were about to come out 3 days after my DCMS, and then I was sort of attacked in a lot of different ways. So the book I found really challenging. I can speak about my experiences, but then
tell me, you challenging it right in the book. What does the book do? What am I going to take from the book?
Well, I hope for one that I have taken I hope no one reads that book and goes, I want to fight him, for a start. It's uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable for some people, right? It's about racism, and a lot of bad things have happened. But I hope in terms of tone and the way where I've tried to take the book is going to be more about, look, these things happen. These things have happened. Regardless of what your name is or how powerful you think you are, you are not going to, you're not going to change history. I have, and I'm thousands, I think nearly 4,000 or 5,000 pieces of documents from different subject access requests, which I could have chosen to put in this book, which I could have chosen to put in public domain, and I've not, because I don't think that helps us move forward. So I hope it's taken in the tone that I've tried to write it in, tried to get it across in. There is some real tangible solutions, which is what I'm interested in. And there is, as I said, there's the uncomfortable conversation the other way, which I think is really important.
So when I get my copy of this book, if I read this book, you're hoping that I get to the end of it, okay, and I understand it all from your point of view, but you're hoping that then I can see that you've got some suggestions for solutions to solve this problem, that maybe I could consider and implement those types of solutions into my environment as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, look, that's my, hope that's how it's taken. And that's why it's taken a bit longer than it was expected to, because
do you know what? I get this tone. You and I met at an iftar some time ago, but I get this tone with you that there's anger still. There's it's almost like unfinished business. It's something in there that I sense, and you're gonna call people out in this book. This book's gonna, as you say, is gonna cut to the chase with a lot of this kind of stuff. Are you? And I get this. I don't know why, but I get this sense that you're not at peace yet with this. It's almost like you're starting a mission.
No, I mean, I slightly agree. Slightly disagree. So in terms of it, is there hurt there? Is there still trauma there? Is there days where I'm angry? Is there things that I read that makes me go, mate, you're tempting me to, respond back? Absolutely there is. I'm not going to sit here and, you know what, everything's fine. Absolutely no chance. The impact on my family's life of this, and put it in no uncertain terms. My dad's got COPD. And
for everyone, what is that?
His lungs, he has an oxygen tank at all times. He struggles breathing, so that helps him breathe. And we've been forced out of a place that we've called home for 21 years. My dad moved us from Pakistan because of safety concerns, and 21 years later, I've had to do the same. Deja vu. That hurts. Really hurts. I think there is a large section of the cricket community which is still very much trying whatever they can, and I've got proof of this, right? I've documentation, trying whatever they can to push this conversation away, because ultimately our status quo protects a certain group of people. So there is them group of people that I see, and I see some of the responses from cricket. I mean, Yorkshire cricket, look at Yorkshire, for example. They've gone back to, the old chair.
They took your career away.
Yeah.
I try and put myself in your shoes.
Yeah. But
right?
You know what? The career part is not, the career part doesn't, it hurts, but it's not the thing that really sort of digs in there. It's more the fact that that move here, and I'm very happy here, but it's taken my dad.
Right.
Yeah, it's taken my dad basically closer to the end of his life. This time last year, we nearly lost him several times because his heart rate, the sort of numbers went from 62 to 120, and the decline in his health because of the move has been massive.
I remember, because that's why you couldn't come on the podcast before, because your dad was sick. And you said to me, I've got a message you. He said, I'm not sure how much longer it's going to last.
And these are things that, really
so
there.
So let's just go through that. I want to get this out here for a second. So dad's health, the way that they reacted to you losing your child, your son, your career, okay, your own confidence and self-belief being battered as well along the way. I look at these things and I would forgive anyone for being pissed off at best, let alone mega angry, dark, depressed, and hopeless. There must be because for all of that, what does it mean? What does it stand for? If I'm going to go through all of this, what does it stand for? Am I just going to suffer? No, and what you're doing is you're on a crusade because you want to solve this problem. Yeah, would that be fair?
Absolutely. It's my purpose. It's my purpose. It's what drives me out of bed every day. I go, as I said, I'm a glass half full person. I always have been. I've got myself back to a place where, I'm in a much better place from a mental health point of view. I'm in a place where I feel valued, I feel loved. I made a few commitments to myself after I spoke out. I'd never put myself in an environment that doesn't value me for how I am. Yeah. But I absolutely know, there's two reasons for this. There's one personal, on a personal level, I've got responsibilities. Failing is not an option. It never has been. I've still got that thing of me as a professional sports person. Failing is not an option, and I'll make it happen. Whatever I have to do, I will make it happen. That's on a personal level because I have responsibilities. But also, as I said, the amount of people that contact me who go through same experiences but haven't been able to, speak up, they're looking at me as to what happens with me. And I got told pretty early on, whistleblowers never have a successful life after. And I'm very, very determined to change that. And I think this book is a step in that direction, and some of the other things I'm doing. not just for myself, but there's a lot of people looking at me. And if my end is not successful, not happy, in a bad way, then how is it going to encourage anyone else to come forward and speak? But, I want to go back to that, the thing that you said about anger, I feel like there's unfinished business. Make no bones about it. The reason I'm emphasizing on the fact that there is all this stuff, all this evidence is, and I said this right from the offset, I'm a human being at the end of the day. Yeah. At some point, there will come a point where, if you keep pushing me and you keep pushing me, that the cause and everything will be forgotten. And at that point, it won't be good for anyone. But hopefully people have seen that through the 4 years, there's been a lot thrown at me and I've not responded in the same manner. And that's what I pride myself on. That's how my father's brought me up. But I am a human being, as you say, and all these things, they hurt. Absolutely they do. Why am I going to sit here and pretend that, there's not nights? It's May, right? It's on the 20th of May, 2018 was when my son when my wife went to hospital and there was no heartbeat. On the 24th of May, I took him from hospital to graveyard. May is normally the month where I struggle the most. And, I saw a tweet from a journalist a couple of days ago. They had Yorkshire's finances on there, and the guy was like, this is why, all people on all sides should have listened, blah, 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 blah. And the initial bit of me nearly responded to say, that just shows, and this is where you talk about ignorance or not realizing, what else, firstly, sat there as a 65-year-old who's never suffered racism, don't tell me how I should respond to it. That's the first thing. But secondly, what else did you want me to do? I kept quiet for a long time. I reported it everywhere internally that we get told to, whether it's coaches, directors of cricket, my own union. I then reported it one more time to the CEO and stuff, got rid of me. I left, went away. I did an interview, which I literally said 3 things in, which you could have got in a room and sorted it out with. Then you went through an independent investigation and briefed against me. Got death threats. My house got attacked. I had people circling my house with a chain in their hand, defecating. My wife ringing me and saying someone's watching our house for hours. All of these are things happening. Yet to this day, I've not put any of this in the public domain. And still now you're saying all sides. This search in our world for balance. There's a right and a wrong. Right? In this search for balance, all we're doing is muddling the lines. There is a right and a wrong. And the fact that even right now, that journalist is sat there saying on all sides of this makes me want to respond. But I've stayed true to what I said to myself when I spoke out, is that actually what they want me to do is go down and respond in these manner to take it away from the cause, which is fundamentally, getting rid of racism out of cricket, out of our society if we can help it, creating more opportunities for those that don't have it, understanding them differences, and hopefully getting to a place where the game that I love, the game that, I've loved my whole life, my kids can enjoy, because as it stands, their psychological safety and physical safety is more important than cricket to me. And it hurts me, it breaks me that my son and daughter have not been taken to the game in the same way I took to the game. And that's my drive, that's my passion and crusade, if you want to, call it that.
Got it. Understood. Okay. Thank you for sharing all of that with me. I feel it, as you talk to me, I feel it. I really kind of, and I want everyone else to feel it too, because it's easy for me, it's easy for people to think that they can brush over stuff like this. And I want to know what this driver is. You have this career now that you've developed, and it's a career that resonates a lot with me because of the work that we are doing with our businesses as well. So let's talk about steps, okay, and the kind of things that people can do, right? Because again, if there's a problem that exists, what are the solutions? What can be some of the solutions? What kind of things can be done? And it's very easy for a committee to be set up to sit and debate
working groups.
Working groups and committees. But when we talk about anxiety, stress, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, you hear these words bandied around. Lots of CEOs, CMOs, CCOs in these businesses, senior management, like, oh yeah, okay, right, we've got this document that's been sent to us now, let's read the document. Now we've got to implement that in our business. But they haven't got a clue, really. So they go through this kind of doing it kind of stuff because they don't know what to do. What steps can people in those types of positions follow? What's wise for them to do?
Yeah, I mean, you've pictured it perfectly there. That's what's happening. You've got, people, and I've spent time with people myself who are well-intentioned, want to do, but actually just don't know how to, and are looking for a bit of direction, but too scared to ask because they're fearful, right? But I think for me, firstly, you've got to understand what these words mean. They can't just be words. What is inclusion? What is diversity? What is representation?
So what is inclusion?
So inclusion is where you feel, you can come your full self to work, and feel valued, respected for who you are, what you are, and included within that workplace, and not, there are not things that are happening. For example, every team bonding event is revolved around alcohol. That means through what you're doing, through your actions, you've excluded a section of, of the community, not just Muslims. There's a lot of people that don't drink now, right? White people, a lot of people from, so a lot of people don't drink. So, that's exclusion. So I think, and I spoke recently at an event, it's important to understand what exclusion looks like and feels like, so you can make sure that you try and include people.
So then let's take that as a real life example.
Yeah.
Because I used to have to put team building events on. Okay. And I'd be like, right, we're going go-kart racing. And all the girls in the office would be like, why are we going go-kart racing? You always have, no matter what you do, if you try and do stuff, you always have some people that are kind of like on the fringes because they either don't like or don't want to.
Yep.
How do you include everybody?
Well, in one event, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to, because naturally, if you've got 30, 40 people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, there's absolutely no way you're going to find a thing that everyone likes. But I guess this is what goes back to understanding your people. And I think it's, for me, I got brought up on this as leadership. I thought this was, a leadership's responsibility to understand their own people. And then, trying to find ways of getting to doing something that, caters for the majority, but understanding that next time you do something that you're going to have to cater for, people that in a different way.
Okay. So is leadership the title with inclusion as the subtitle?
Without doubt. This is all, for me, all of this comes under leadership.
Okay.
All of this is understanding your people. Firstly, taking an interest in your staff, your workplace. They're your assets.
Okay, but if people don't know what diversity, what inclusion means, and they're kind of tiptoeing around it.
Yeah.
Okay, if we just think about it practically, a great leader will understand what those things are by default. Yes or no?
No, I don't think not by default. This is not necessarily a thing that, when you look at leaders, CEOs, CFOs.
A great leader. We're not saying any.
Yeah. So like a lot of people, they have and this is where within this conversation, again, we forget that leaders are human beings as well.
Yeah.
Right? They need development opportunities. They need support. They need growth. As well as, as much as anyone else within the system, they just need it at a different level. So yeah, a great leader, absolutely. A great leader
understands what inclusion means. And he says, right, I understand what that means. I understand what diversity means. I'm going to implement my interpretation of that into my business to make sure, because inclusion to me isn't, for a lot of people, well, not for me anyway, what is obvious. Inclusion to me is you as my leader sitting down and helping me understand what my goals and ambitions are and cheering me on to get there. That's making me feel included.
Yeah.
Okay. For me personally, it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to be invited to the next drinking session on a Friday night or the next whatever it is event that's taking place. I want to know that you care about me.
Let me challenge you on that. Would you have felt like this as a 21-year-old? Do you think you've grown to become that now, where where you don't need you don't feel like you need to be there, and what you feel like included you means is this. Do you think that was as you've grown, or do you think that's actually how you've been always?
As a 21-year-old kid, growing up in the environment that I grew up in, I needed somewhere to belong. And I found a job and a company where I felt I could belong, because my family environment, I felt excluded from or lonely. So I belonged. And where I belonged is that the people that were my leaders at the time took an interest in me. They cared about they sat down and said, what do you want to achieve? What matters to you? What's your dream? Okay, so if we can help you achieve your dream, how you feel about it? I'm like, amazing. And so, was it perfect all the time? No. Some of the things I had to do, great. No, some of them were a bit of a slog. But I always felt that they had my back.
They cared. They had your back. That's the big thing. Actually, it's not. So I don't need someone all the time or anything. All I need to do is feel with action, feel with language, body language and language is that if I fall, they're on my side. That's it. That's what I need to feel. But that's not what, everyone is different. And, as generations are changing, as people, brought up differently, there is different ways. But, I guess the key skill for that leader is to try and make sure that they understand their people and, they can communicate that with, their workforce in an effective way to make them feel included. And if that's on an individual basis, that could be on an individual basis. That's on a team basis. That's what, they've got. For me, the most important thing with all of this is don't feel like there's any big golden nugget. There is not this one big thing. If I do this, this is what's going to happen, because it's all about human behaviors. And we're all wired differently. We all react to things differently. We all want different things. So there cannot be this one fit all for everyone. And that's, I guess, the flexibility and the nimbleness of a leader. But while doing that, I think the best and the greatest will make sure that they have the support network around them for them to be able to understand that they're human beings as well, and be able to deal with that at the same time as making sure performance is, a massive priority. Because what I think has happened in this space a lot over the last few years is, in this, as you said, this document's come on, we must do this, right? Within that, in this run to do these things and do it overnight, actually, performances has been forgotten in some places. And then what happens is, what's the easy target? And you're seeing the rhetoric right now. Get rid of diversity things, get rid of this, get rid of that. It's a cost. It's a cost. And speaking to this, FTSE 350 event, companies, and now my big thing was actually, we're at a similar time to when you will have seen case studies when industries are under pressure financially, the first thing they do is cut marketing budgets. But there are case studies where those companies that stay and strong and double down because it's coming a bit cheaper rate and more space end up on the other side really, really well. I think we are in a similar situation with our workplaces in this space. Whoever gets this right or gets in the right direction now, what I see from young people, and they are tomorrow's workforce, if these things are not going to be right in your workplace, people are not going to work for you. Simple as that. They're just not. Social change, climate change, social justice, gender equality, race equality. These are the things that young people want to talk about. These are your this is your workforce, future workforce.
Yeah.
If you can't see that, understand that, believe that, and make a business case for it, you're going to be hit in 5-10 years' time, and it'll confront you in a way that could really affect your businesses moving forward. That's my belief, and it goes back to sort of making sure you really understand it, what it is, what it stands for, and then at the same time understand you don't have a golden nugget. This is not a golden nugget. You're going to make mistakes, and it's fine. Take the fear out of it. Make sure within that safe space, people know that they can make mistakes and, improve themselves. It's like any other part of the business. So that's one element of it. I think for me, and this is the one I've talked about quite extensively in there, is accountability. We're human beings. You give us a finger, we grab a hand. That clear line of accountability needs to be shown to your workforce. And where we live here now in Dubai, and you see people behave here and you see the same people behave in the UK, and it's two different things, because they feel like they can get away with a lot. and I think human beings need a clear line of accountability. That doesn't mean if you fall foul of that, let's say you've lost your job. If there's a will to be better, accept and be better and, improve yourself, there should always be second chances. But if there is not, if there is someone that is adamant that they're going to use the P word, or they don't care about, their colleagues, their team, you know what? They need to go find it somewhere else. If you are true as a business that you are stick to your values, then that is the difficult bit that you have to have. And far too many organizations, institutions don't want to have that bit because it is the most uncomfortable bit. Because actually it makes you confront your own biases. It makes you look, oh, did I do that as a young kid? Or did I do that as a young, we've all, and, again, I've talked about my own mistakes in the book. I've talked about the anti-Semitic, post that came 2 days after my select committee and, my response to that, but my learning from that and why it came or why it might have come, because I went further to find out why I might have said that, and the response I've had from the Jewish community on the back of that is something I am incredibly thankful for. It's given me, they basically, brought me in, brought me into the environment, into their community and educated me. And that's something I'm, incredibly thankful for. But that, for me, is one of the best parts of my journey, because that shows that actually there is space for, opportunity to grow. And I feel like I've grown through that.
You go out and you do lots of public speaking to lots of large companies. That what you're doing, do you go in, speak, offer ideas, advice and solutions, or do you run programs in companies where you go in and you teach the leadership the things that are missing and help them essentially create a strategy?
Yeah, so I think again, a lot of things that I've done has just happen. Allah's looked after me, put me in environment.
Before you go any further, I forget you're so young. Yeah, it's like you're talking like a wise old man in this conversation, and I feel you're the same age as me. Sorry, I shouldn't say that.
Well, I feel like I've seen too much for a 33-year-old. Yeah. I wish I had a bit more naiveness about me.
Yeah, maybe.
But you know what? Like I said, I've taken the opportunity over the last few years to learn, and I've learned a lot. And so I feel like wherever I've found myself, Allah's put me in a situation that's given me an opportunity to grow. I didn't know what public speaking was. I didn't know what corporates was. I'm a boy from Karachi, Barnsley, played cricket all my life. Didn't know any of this stuff. Out of select committee, I got asked to speak at Linklaters, which is a Magic Circle law firm. Didn't even know what Magic Circle was. When the request came in, I had to Google it. And I went there. And what I found from that was, I found it incredibly therapeutic. I felt like it was, another space for me to just sort of, get a lot of things off my chest and sort of, get rid of them. But then I found actually, from my point of view, I was finding situations where leaders, CEOs, boards, chairs, they just didn't know what to do. And I feel like I bring a sense of perspective which is unfiltered. I'm not interested in the sound bites. All I'm interested in is telling people as it is. Because I think, again, we've got to a society where you're either a yes person or you hate each other, and there's no conversations where you can agree respectfully, disagree respectfully. If we disagree on something today, that's fine. We're not going to fall out. It's fine. We'll still be fine. And then I can, tomorrow something comes forward and, I can look at it with a fresh lens. So just taking, I've learned a lot of that from it. And then, to be honest, the move happened unexpected, young family, father's health. I just feel like I've just been on this sort of treadmill of speaking. And my next thing, because leadership's something that I've loved, I captain at a young age, on the field, off the field. I firmly think, second to having success yourself is watching people that you've supported having success. I think that is so fulfilling. I find that so fulfilling. It really, I can put my head on the pillow at night and feel like, so happy for that person. So leadership's been a thing that I've always wanted to do. So I'm now exploring that. I think that next natural step for me is sort of strategies, working a little bit more, I think, directly with, as opposed to going in and speaking for an hour, because as good as that is, I want to see where that goes. I want to have a bit more of an involvement where, you know, I am working with organizations, maybe, I don't know whether in groups yet, but or directly like CEOs and sort of, you know, leaders where if these situations arise, you know, their first point of contact, I want them to call me, I can help them. But then that's the one bit, but actually how to make sure and how to look at things so these situations don't arrive is something where I want to really get to work in. And I feel like I've got a lot of learning to add to it, but a lot of perspective as well. And I feel like I can challenge people in a manner that, you know, they can still have a conversation with me because, you know, we'll create things and have a look at my perspective and your perspective on the same thing will be different.
Yeah.
And just try and get you to go, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about what this might look like for this community or this section of your workforce? And it's, again, it goes back to that. If you have a diversity of thought in your workforce, when you're creating a product, when you're creating a service, you're going to create one that is accessible and one that is you can sell to everyone. And that's, you know, that's the sort of space I want to, you know, get involved in and help in. But, you know, I feel like I'm a bit fresh out of university. I'm enjoying the freedom of, you know, doing a lot of different things. You know, I've just started my own podcast in cricket. Obviously got the book, you know, different sort of public speaking. I'm starting to do a little bit of writing for Arab News. But yeah, I want to do a wide range of things. And I think actually that's what my learning and my growth is. Yeah, I'm really enjoying, you know, I'm a consultant with MDR Mayfair around the business of sport and the commercial aspects. You know, again, just got pushed into it and I've absolutely loved it. So just a wide range of things that I'm doing now, but this is what drives me out of bed. When's
the book out?
So the book's out on 13th of June. Yeah, I head over to London next week. The physical copies arrived at Orion yesterday, so I can't wait to get over. I've got a full schedule of events and stuff, which I'm really looking forward to. As I said, this book there's been a lot of sleepless nights, and I just hope it lands and it's taken in the way it's meant.
I hope so too. Azeem Rafiq, It's Not Banter, out on the 16th of June, you said?
13th of June.
13th of June. Excellent stuff. Azeem, thank you so much for coming to join us on the show today. It's great talking to you, getting to know you even better, and hopefully we've got lots of stuff we could be talking about in the future too.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.